I guess what I'm getting at is not necessarily the intention, but the fact that there's still something intrinsic to this type of AI, where we're still sort of treating it as a sort of intelligence where we can essentially say, well, you know what I mean, but it doesn't know what we mean. It's just following these sets of hyper complex things.
Even ignoring the guardrail issue.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this whole concept of hallucination, and it's like an interesting concept because everything that the LLM does is basically a hallucination, right? So if you think about it, even as you think of it as being a large model, like GPT-4 has hundreds of billions of parameters.
Yes.
Right. But it has taken trillions of gigabytes of data and compacted it into only hundreds of billions of parameters, which means it's by its nature lossy. It does not have a full catalog of everything it's been trained on. It has the gist of everything it's been trained on.
Right.
And the gist there is even just probabilistic sequences of words. It's not cognition in the classic sense that we tend to think of it as. So let's say it took all of Chris Cienko's writings over Chris's entire lifetime, right? And it builds that into the model, not by having a catalog of those things, but it's just like, Chris uses these words in conjunction with these words and these words in conjunction with these words. Now, let's say we start with that and we ask it a question that has never been asked of Chris and that Chris has never expressed an opinion on.
Right.
Now, when it gets it right, Chris is like, this is like a parlor trick. Yeah, I've never expressed that thought, but it got it right.
Yeah.
When it gets it wrong, it's called a hallucination. Both of them are hallucinations. It's just one is a right hallucination and one is a wrong hallucination.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like all the coincidences you see versus the ones that you don't, or the non-coincidences that you don't note, and things like that. So yeah, it's the sort of stopped clock that keeps the right time twice a day, sort of thing. Like
so never view the system as an oracle of truth. I think the other
I guess I'm also just thinking in terms of just the way that it's built such that people are still thinking of it, as you say, as an oracle of truth, and that we're sort of interacting it because I think everyone wants it to kind of actually be intelligence, that there's still a lot of interacting it like it is intelligence rather than as a tool.
But even let's assume for a second it was intelligent.
Yes.
There's another kind of secondary problem. Let's say you went out there and you talked to a bunch of chefs about how to make a perfect omelet. And let's say 60% of them came down on the side of very high temperature pan, very quick process, you get it out, fluffy, perfect. And 40% of them said low temperature, allow the curds to build up, allow a creamy texture to build up. Okay. Now the question is, what is the truth about making the perfect omelet?
Right.
There is really not a truth. And so you could then design a system that would throw away the 40% and never expose you to the 40%. And only show you the 60%,
right? Which
would be kind of like, well, that wouldn't be like talking to a collection of human beings, which the LLMs are meant to kind of approximate. So what does it do? 60% of times it gives you one, 40% of the time it gives you a different one, which basically means there is really no truth. This is one of the reasons why you have variability in responses. It's to expose you to the totality of knowledge, which is by definition not a single unified truth about every subject.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, so you've sort of done a nice job of explaining what especially the sort of angle of being able to add conflicting information into a set of guardrails and so forth. So what are some of the I don't know if solutions is the right word, because as you said, there maybe not necessarily like a central answer to these questions, but as these problems begin to proliferate, what are some of the ways that you see to sort of stem them?
Yeah, I think there just needs to be a lot of awareness. So partially on the security side, use least privilege, be aware of what plugins you're running, be aware of what, if you're accessing a public data source, treat it with a degree of distrust, even if it's something that you're paying for, because again, it can be a paid service. I can pay for VirusTotal and have a commercial service for it, but let's not be confused. The submissions into VirusTotal are public submissions. And so the notion that a bad guy can submit something into Virus Total and coax me to download it is totally believable, even if it's a commercial service.
Yeah.
So what controls exist on the data that you pull in and the data you expose, and then be very cognizant of least privilege with regards to what the system does in terms of what things you hook it up to.
Okay.
So that's on the protective side. View your guardrails as imperfect at best. I think these are, I liken them to instructions you give to a 5-year-old. Hey, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
It's like when a stranger says, hey, here's some ice cream. It's like, okay, I'll talk to the stranger, right?
Right.
So it is the guardrails themselves are in instruction. Well, the guardrails that the customer implements are in instructions. The guardrails, obviously, that OpenAI and others implement are somewhat deeper and are a little supposedly harder to overcome. Again, techniques have emerged on those things.
Okay.
I think the more interesting question is for the other two items that we talked about, attackers using LLMs and generative AI to improve their odds.
Right.
It's going to become very hard. Again, the degree of skepticism that you now begin to have around email phishing and voicemails that are left for you, which can now be modulated to sound like your boss.
Yeah.
Those things make it that much harder to spot the fakes. Yeah. Because if Chris, again, if you're a relatively public figure and you're tweeting about your travel and all this other kind of stuff, and I can use that information to contemporaneously produce an email that looks like it came from Chris that refers to things that are actually things that are happening to Chris right now, and send it to somebody, it's more believable that it's from Chris, right? We're used to kind of the malformed, bad grammar, out of context, but that stuff is just going to get better. And so we have to think about what those controls are going to, what controls we have in place to, again, put additional controls in place, because basically social engineering is going to get more effective. It's just a matter of fact. So
it is.
That means your initial preventive layer is going to become less porous, which basically means you're going to need to have stronger resilience behind that to look for weird stuff that happens. On the defensive side, I think we need, again, you can declare LLMs not to be ready for SOC, but then you're you're choosing to go down the pacifist route while you have an attacking army. So choosing to sit this one out is not really a thing, but you have to be smart about utilizing it in a way where you can overcome some of the hallucinations and other things. It's like there's a lot of cybersecurity knowledge built into ChatGPT-4. You want it to be an advisor to to things, to make make life easier while still producing a user experience that does not imply that it's an oracle of truth.
Have you seen Work Bites, the new security awareness training series from Infosec? Our team produced this series with 3 E's in mind, making security awareness training entertaining, engaging, and educational. Just go to infosecinstitute.com/free to learn more about this hilarious office comedy. And hey, let us know what you think about it.